possible. And thank you for reading.
Manny Pacquiao, the goal, I don't think there will be a problem for Manny.
Has its share of great fights. But every once in a while, human mind can also be controlled for nothing.
Only here para sa bayan. And that's the opening bell for Round by Round presented by Eastern Communications. Mabuhay Pilipinas! Welcome world! I'm Boyet Sison.
And I'm Ryan Sangalia. Dennis Principe joins us later on in the show.
On this edition of the show, we discussed a recent pronouncement by Manny Pacquiao's longtime strength and conditioning coach, Justin Fortune, who said that he swears that he won't anymore be stepping foot inside the Wild Card gym in Los Angeles after being blamed by Freddie Roach for the Filipino icon's cramps during the recent fight against WBA welterweight super champion Dennis Ugas in Las Vegas. And looking at how the interview with Justin Fortune went, Justin Fortune is a very, very angry guy. Ryan.
Yeah, it's just funny how everything, all these partnerships, all these tenuous relationships, they run smoothly until someone loses. So that's when the blame game, starts, because everyone has to sort of secure their own spot on a team, and they don't want to seem like they were the weak link. So Justin Fortune, he's had problems with Freddie Roach in the past. We all remember how they had sued each other before. Justin Fortune had worked with Manny Pacquiao when he first came to America, and then Fortune was the odd man out after he had a beef with Freddie Roach after the 2008 fight with Jorge Solis, where Freddie Roach felt he was still entitled to part of the purse, even though Freddie Roach was busy training Oscar De La Hoya and didn't have time to work with Manny for that fight. So they had a big parting there. It was a very ugly split. So it's, like I said, everything's run smoothly until it's time to figure out who's to blame for the loss.
Actually, Justin Fortune is saying in that interview that apparently there was a physiotherapist by the name of Dr. Sean Hampton who was working on Pacquiao's legs in the dressing room about 30 minutes before the fight. Is that normal for Manny to have somebody work on his legs 30 minutes before the fight?
Apparently not. And people will remember I believe 1985 fight with between Thomas Hearns and Marvin Hagler. Emanuel Stewart actually blamed one of Hearns's hangers-on for massaging Hearns's legs in the dressing room. Now, what he had said is that the massage before a fight, it leaves the legs spent, right? Because after a massage, what do you want to do? You want to relax, right? So it's probably not the best thing to do before a fight. And that was sort of the storyline in that fight, was that Hearns couldn't box, so he had to brawl with Marvin Hagler because of his legs. So that's the storyline that Justin Fortune is going with here. And and you have to wonder if that contributed to Manny Pacquiao looking like he didn't have legs, like his legs were done early on in the fight, and that's, people were kind of saying that's an issue with age. And yeah, it could be partially that, but was this massage also to blame?
Is it also possible that because of how hard-headed Manny Pacquiao could be at times, right? He has the tendency to overtrain, and apparently Justin Fortune is saying that Manny even did road work. A couple of days or maybe 2 days before the weigh-in, he was still doing a bit of heavy training, and which is not advisable. But he still did it. Does this really contribute, or did this really contribute to Manny having stiff legs during the fight?
It may have, and I think that the change in opponent might be responsible for that as well, because Manny might have felt that he needed to do more or do something different from what was the original plan. Now, Manny, I believe after the 2017 loss to Jeff Horn, he realized, okay, in that fight, he overtrained and his body can't do what it used to. So he had to adjust to, just giving himself more rest and making sure that he wasn't leaving it all in the gym, as they say. So Manny is that kind of fighter that you have to actually pull him back, because if you allow him, he'll train, all day. He can't train the way that he did when he was 22. And I think he has to realize that. And I thought he realized that. And now we're learning that he has, he's still that kind of person that you have to harness them a bit so that they don't go out there and train, leave it in the gym and then have nothing on fight night.
Okay, let me just go back to the point we're in as to how this conversation started, Ryan. The relationship between Justin Fortune and Freddie Roach, as you've already mentioned, has not been rosy, to say the least. But how is the relationship between Justin Fortune and Buboy Fernandez? The reason why I'm asking this, just to give you a clearer picture, is that there was a point in time wherein Justin Fortune and Buboy Fernandez, together with Marvin Somodio, were the ones that took charge of Manny's camp for the Lucas Pathesi fight. And apparently, I mean, the results are very satisfactory. And Justin Fortune is saying that, hey, come on, without Freddie, we can survive without Freddie. We don't really need Freddie in our corner anymore. What do you think of that?
Well, I think with Buboy Fernandez, he is the ultimate team player. So I once asked him about, the egos and how it worked out when he became the head trainer and Freddie was then relegated to assistant trainer. And he said, listen, I don't care who is the chief second. I don't care about getting the adulation and the attention. I just want my guy to win. So Buboy is the kind of person that he will defer to whoever is the best person at that moment to talk or to be the one who's imparting the instructions. And if Justin Fortune, who has a lot of experience, as Justin Fortune, remember, he was a heavyweight fighter. He fought Lennox Lewis. He has a lot of experience. He's owned his own gym, which is a very popular gym in LA. He knows the boxing game. If at any moment Fortune had something to add that could help the fighter, Buboy would have listened. So I think Buboy can have a good relationship, a good professional relationship with anyone. And that's why they were able to get along for a fight that was not a big fight. Matisse was, kind of past his prime. So I think Manny could have sort of trained himself for that position, but they certainly didn't get in the way of each other.
Just for a last point before we end this particular segment, how do you think if ever there'll be a next Pacquiao fight, how do you think the intramurals within the Pacquiao camp will play out if Manny retains all of them? Meaning he still wants Justin Fortune in this corner. He still wants Freddie Roach in this corner. And obviously, he's not going to let go of Buboy Fernandez. So, but how will the intramurals play out if Manny Pacquiao once again goes back into the ring?
Well, the way I think is that they've gotten along in the past, but these issues are not new. There have always been troubles. There's always been egos. There's always been people trying to find their spot. That's not going to go away. But it only comes to the light publicly when something goes wrong. So I think what you'll see is everyone saying, yeah, we're just doing our job and we're, this person doing this person doing that. And then if something goes wrong, then we'll see this sort of blame game and pointing fingers. So Manny Pacquiao is so accustomed to training in the storm and this, all these distractions around him. I don't think he'd have it any other way.
Okay, for the next segment of today's program, we now turn over to our colleague Dennis Principe, who talks about former world flyweight champion Malcolm Tunyacao sparring with current unified bantamweight world champion Naoya Inoue. Dennis?
Thank you very much, Ryan and Boyet. At ito, ngayon naman pag-uusapan natin itong gumagandang mga activity pagdating po sa bantamweight division. And syempre, ang talagang isang pinag-aagawan dyan ay itong sinasabing superstar of that division na Uya Inoue. Marami naghahamon. Ngayon yung sinasabi nating pwedeng top 2 dyan sa naghahamon sa kanya ay itong si Nonito Donaire Jr. at Janrel Casimiro. Parehong world champion, pareho po nating kababayan. Maganda pag-usapan natin si Uya Inoue dahil makakasama natin ang ating kababayan, former world champion mula po dyan sa Japan. Nakasparing ni Uya Inoue. Kumpare ko, Malcolm Eagle Eye Tunyakaw. Malki, magandang araw sa iyo.
Magandang araw, magandang gabi sa atin, lalo dyan sa Pilipinas. Na-miss ko na ang bansa natin at salamat din sa pag-invite mo sa akin dito, pre, at malaking karangalan ko na nakausap tayo ulit at sa magandang gabi sa ating lahat, lalo na sa mga boxing fan. Maraming salamat at magandang gabi po.
Okay. Malki, yun nga, nabanggit ko na Uya Inoue, kung meron mang dapat tanungin dito para malaman natin yung talagang lakas niya, talagang galing niya. Ikaw yun, nakasparing mo si Uya Inoue. Bago natin pag-usapan yan, marirecall mo pa ba? Kailan kayo nag-sparring at saka sino yung pinaghahandaan niya kung naaalala mo pa?
2015 pre, September. Tapos yun, na-Narvaez yata yung nakalaban niya para sa darating niya laban na Superfly, WBO World Championship. Yung nakalaban ni John Nito. Kaya kinuha ko ng sparring ni Uya Inoue.
Now, alam ko nung pinagkikwentuhan natin, nabanggit mo na 3 ko yung Pilipino na nakasparing niya.
Apat.
Okay, 4 kayo, di ba? At tama ba yun? Nabanggit mo yung 3 sa 4. Lahat napabagsak ni Inoue, tapos ikaw lang ata yung hindi bumagsak.
Pre, nung una, ako unang kinuha lang sparring. 2 weeks lang sana yung kinuha, yung pag-sparring ko sa kanila, yung pag-hire nila sa akin. Tapos yun, siguro nagustuhan si Inoue. Tapos yun, sabi niya, Malcolm, pwede, sabi niya sa papa niya, Malcolm, pwede pa kita i-extend na lang 3 weeks. Sabi ko, kahit 2 months pa. Tapos may Filipino daw, para may may makasama ako sa ako din makagayat sa mga Filipino. Kaya yun, ay dumarating. Masaya din ako. Kaya yun. Kaya yun, pre.
Okay.
Masaya ako na maraming Filipino. Okay.
Nung nakasparing mo siya noon, ano ba masasabi mo sa galaw niya, sa lakas niya? No? Kasi alam ko pag sparring, syempre mas makapal na gloves yung ginagamit niyo. Pero ikaw ba talagang naramdaman mo ba lahat yung lakas, yung galing ni Uya Inoue?
Pre, kasi pagdating ko doon, nung araw na yun, sparring kami 4 rounds. Sabi ko, parang wala sa akin, ako kaya ito. Nung sparring, bigla ko, galing ito na bata. Ito lang yata ang nag-sparring ko na yung mabilis, power, at saka yung pasensya niya. Nandun, kaya yun. Kaya paano, naganda ko yung goal lang, andun ako kasi experience ako sa kanya Diba? Kaya yun, medyo din ako, maraming manood na tao. Pag kami ng dalawa mag-sparring, maraming manood talaga pag kami ng dalawa mag-sparring.
Alright. Yung attitude niya sa loob ng ring, Malki, ano masasabi mo? Siya ba meron bang disiplina kung gumalaw? Parati bang kumbaga on time? O meron bang mga issue na may time na hindi sumisipot? Yung mga ganun ba?
Hindi pre, grabe. Grabe yan pre. Grabe ang disiplina pagdating sa training. Kasi papa niya ang trainer niya Grabe ang mag-training, grabe. Walang yan, hindi malaki ang ulo. Magandang halubilo sa mga boxer, lalo ng pag Filipino, sa kanya. Grabe bata, grabe ang disiplina. Kaya sabi ko sa kanya na, yun, talagang maging superstar ka. Okay, sa akin naman pina-appreciate ko din sa kanya kasi hingi siya, kahit minsan matawag yung trainer niya, yung assistant trainer nila, tumatawag sa akin na Malcolm, in a way, kahit na pre, nung nandun pa ako, kami lang dalawa magpaturo sa akin, daw ang gagawin, pag saspo ang kalaban, yun pre, kahit magaling na siya, superstar na siya, pa sa
Okay, maraming salamat sa iyo, Malcolm Eagle Eye Tunyakaw, former WBC flyweight champion ang nagpabagsak sa nag-knockout kay Manny Pacquiao. Maraming salamat sa iyo, pare. At magkita tayo soon.
Maraming salamat pre at ingat kayo dyan at ingat tayong lahat sa pandemya at keep safe lagi and God bless.
And that was Malcolm Eagle Eye Tunyacao, the former WBC World Flyweight Champion na ngayon po ay nakabase sa Japan. Back to our main hosts, Boyet and Ryan.
Thank you very much, Dennis Principe. That was a very interesting segment that you brought us. Let's now go to our Fearless Fighter, brought to you by Eastern Communications.
Now, for my pick for the Fearless Fighter, I'm going with Jason Mama. He's challenging this Saturday for the IBF Flyweight Championship against Sonny Edwards, who's making his first title defense. Why I'm picking Mama is because he's going to the belly of the beast. He's going to London. He's going to Sonny Edwards' hometown to do it. That's not easy. You're talking about going around the world. You're going to have the jet lag. You know, you're going to be eating food that's different. And all the time, he's going to have to be making weight. Sonny Edwards is no pushover. He's undefeated. And to go over there and really try your chances, that's a big step forward for it. So that's why I'm going with Jason Mama as my Fearless Fighter.
Well, as far as technique and skill is concerned, can you give me a very short comparative between the two?
I think that they're both very well skilled, but at the domestic level, right? So Jason Mama was a national champion in the Philippines, and Sonny Edwards was a national champion in England. So they've learned their craft against this domestic competition. Now we're going to see how they can perform against fighters from the other side of the world.
By the way, our colleague Nisi Casiano will have an exclusive piece on Jason Mama this coming Thursday. And that was our Fearless Fighter, brought to you by Eastern Communications. Now, Ryan, since we already talked about Filipinos fighting Britons, have there been other fights between British subjects and Filipinos?
You know, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because the first, not just Filipino world champion, but Asian world champion, Pancho Villa, yeah, we're going all the way back. He won his world championship against a British fighter, a man from Wales, Jimmy Wilde, the legendary Jimmy Wilde, a very small guy. He used to knock out people who were much bigger than himself in circus fights. But Pancho Villa went to New York and pulled up the big upset against Jimmy Wilde. But 1983, we saw Frank Cedeno. He traveled to the UK and upset Charlie Magri. That was a big upset at the time. That was for the WBC Flyweight Championship. Not too long ago at the Olympics, Carlo Paalam was going for the gold medal against Bilal Yafai, and Yafai was able to pull off the victory and win the gold medal. Probably the highest profile of recent, decades was Manny Pacquiao against Ricky Hatton. That was one of the most violent knockouts I'd ever seen in boxing. That was a second round knockout. Manny Pacquiao just sort of teed off on Hatton, and
knocked out Hatton cold. Knocked out Hatton cold. Yep,
snoring. Put him in retirement for a couple years. Really bad knockout there. But there was another Edwards who had fought a Filipino. This was Charlie Edwards, going for the older brother of Sonny Edwards, going for his first world championship. John Real Casimiro, the ultimate road warrior in boxing, took the John Real Casimiro crazy show over to the UK and really beat up Charlie Edwards.
Maybe that's what Edwards lost, because of the crazy JR Casimiro show.
Exactly. Yeah, he brought his show over there, and
his brand of crazy.
Yes. In ring, out of the ring.
Might be the blonde hair.
Yeah, he was definitely looking stylish over there. And Edwards, who went on to become a world champion in his own right, he was stopped by John Casimero. Really it was a little bit too much for Edwards to bite off at that moment. So, but Edwards wound up becoming world champion later on.
Is there a particular style? I'm mentioning all of these fighters that that you just did. Is there a particular style for all of these Britons that they employed against the Filipino boxer?
I'm trying to think of a common thread. These are different fighters. The one thing that's interesting is that, like, you don't see a whole lot of these things because you don't typically, when you think of England or Great Britain, the United Kingdom, you don't think of flyweight fighters. You think of, a little bit bigger fighters.
Yeah, heavier set fighters, right?
Exactly. So, we're not going to have a Filipino versus England clash at cruiserweight. We're not going to see, David Haye against the Filipino. So that's sort of, why we don't see so many of these. But in terms of a style, when you think of Filipinos, you think of all action, you think of aggressive fighters.
Yes.
The British fighters tend to be a little bit more technical because remember, Marcus de Queensberry rules, they come from the United Kingdom. We can trace the modern lineage of boxing, professional boxing to the United Kingdom.
Yeah, even watching that clip between Pancho Villa and Jimmy Wild. Jimmy Wild was not really a very active fighter. He just waited to counter punch against Pancho Villa, while Pancho Villa would usually crouch. He was usually on a crouch and will launch his punches from a crouch and move and punch upward. That's what how he was with Jimmy Wild. But of course, with Pacquiao, with the modern fighters like Palam and Casimero, they are more active fighters. They would use the ring. They would bounce around and have more variety as far as their fighting style is concerned. But how has the Filipino now moving forward matched up against all of these British fighters?
The one thing that sort of is the commonality there is that the British fighters tend to have a lot more money behind them because there's a lot of there's TV money there. There's there's a culture there of selling tickets. Like any promoter in the Philippines will know that, like, you can't really sell tickets in the Philippines, to boxing events. So they tend to have a home court advantage, home ring advantage, or so to say. So that's one thing, in boxing, when the bell rings, it's just two people, but there are a lot of things that can happen outside the ring that can impact the outcome. There's a reason why Sonny Edwards is not flying to General Santos City, to fight, Jason Mama at Legao Gym. And we're seeing Mama going over to the United Kingdom. So money really does talk in boxing. And I think that that's one big advantage that the British fighters have. Now, that said, Sonny Edwards is getting some pretty good sparring there, I'm sure. But which country has the better flyweights, right? So Jason Mama isn't leaving the Sandman gym. He's training at his home gym. And he's sparring with Furlan Saludar and Dave Apolinario. Those are two pretty good flyweights to get ready for a world championship fight. So you wonder if that is in itself an advantage for Jason Mama.
Well, and we will be finding out sooner than soon, which it'll be happening in a few days. So we will see and talk about that. Or our maybe the rest of our team will be able to talk about that particular fight. And that's the final bell for today's episode of Round by Round, presented by Eastern Communications. I'm Boyet Sisa.
And I'm Ryan Sangalia. We're on Facebook at 6 p.m. Monday through Friday and on our YouTube channel right after. So like, follow, share, and subscribe now.
On the next edition of our program will be Bill Velasco, my partner, Ryan Sangalia, and yours truly will be answering the bell. Join us on the next Round by Round. All boxing, all Filipino, all the time. See you soon.